welcome back to Ivy's Mindset, where we discuss everything finance and what it exactly means to you. Everything we've been discussing has led us to this moment. So this week we're going to be covering one of the most interesting topics. But before I dive into that topic, let me give you guys a brief overview of everything we've been discussing so far. So initially we started with value being the origination of everything. And then from there we went down to systems. We said that systems are nature's way or human's way of organizing and protecting value. Then we went down to institutions. Institutions are nature's way of making systems permanent. After institutions, we discussed the economic engines and we explained its rewarding system. Then from there, we went on to discuss wealth flow. Wealth flow just goes to show how you can grow and maintain and retain your wealth in a given society and in a given economy. And then all these things we've discussed about is leading down to this interesting topic that we're going to bring in today. And this topic is the rise and fall of societies.
Everything we have discussed so far has been building to this moment, because here is the uncomfortable truth that history keeps proving over and over again. No society lasts forever. No empire is permanent. No economic system is immune to collapse. Every civilization that has ever risen to greatness has either fallen completely or been fundamentally transformed beyond recognition. Rome fell. The Ottoman Empire collapsed. The British Empire dissolved. The Soviet Union disintegrated, and every single time, the people living inside those civilizations in their final decades could not believe it was actually happening. They thought their system was too big, too established, too powerful to fail. They were wrong. And understanding why they were wrong is one of the most important things you can ever learn about money, power, and civilization. Let us start with how societies rise. Because before we talk about collapse, we need to understand what greatness actually looks like and why it emerges in the first place. Now I'm going to hand this over to my partner.
As my partner has said, before we talk about collapse, we have to understand what greatness actually looks like and why it emerges in the first place. And as to that note, I'll be giving you guys 4 reasons for the rise of societies. But before then, we actually have to understand what makes an economy or a society rise in the first place. Just to put it simply, societies rise when they solve the fundamental problem of human organization better than anyone around them. This is just the basics to why societies rise in the first place, and I'll explain why. The civilization that figures out how to coordinate large numbers of people, directs collective energy towards productive ends, protects what has been built, and creates conditions where individuals can contribute their most. Those are the kind of civilizations and those are the kind of societies that end up rising while others end up falling. This is not magic. This is not destiny. This is superior organization producing superior outcomes. Moving on to the conditions that make societies rise. The first on our list is what we call productive surplus. So this is so easy to understand. Productive surplus now basically relates to a situation in an economy where the economy produces more than it can consume. So basically, in effect, there is a surplus revolving around that economy. And this surplus now, we're talking about whatever resources that economy has to offer. Productive surplus is the foundation of everything. Without it, everybody will be too busy to try to make ends meet. The reason why productive surplus is one of the major conditions that enables a country or an economy to rise is because it enables other citizens to focus on what we call specialization. I'd love to give you a definition of specialization, but I know that you already know what specialization means. But let me just give you an example just to explain a real-world scenario as to how specialization works in economies. So, take for instance now, a country, a society or an economy who is currently focused on agro-business and is running a productive surplus. Citizens now will not be bothered on how they are going to find food for the next few days. I mean, they wouldn't, because there is excess food and supply. The remaining citizens now will have the time and the luxury to go and find other things to become productive in. The good news now is that productive surplus can come from so many different directions, so you just have to choose what you want to specialize in. Moving on, the second condition we have on our list is institutional strength. Every society that rises have one thing in common: their institutions are strong and reliable. And this is because when institutions are strong, trust is high. And when trust is high, economic activity and growth rapidly accelerates because people now are willing to make investments, enter into long-term contracts, and are willing to cooperate with strangers because they know that their funds and their investments are secured and protected. Now, speaking about institutional strength, institutions are only strong when they abide by the one underlying principle that governs them. The lawyers are going to be fond of this. This is what we call the rule of law. The rule of law states that nobody is above the law, and this is one of the things that give institutions their strength. So, the third condition on our list is the openness to innovation. Now, innovation is not all about technology. It is about a society's willingness to change, adapt, and improve its own systems. Going through history, the economies that dominated their eras are those ones who were open to change. In the 20th century, the United States rose to global dominance because it created an environment where people, ambitious minds, could come and test their ideas. The Islamic Golden Age produced extraordinary advances in mathematics, science, astronomy, medicine, and so many different fields because scholars across the world were invited into their domain. It gave them an environment where their ideas could be tested, approved, and scaled. The fourth on our list is trade and connection. No society has ever risen to greatness in isolation. The civilizations that dominated their eras were almost always the ones that were deeply rooted into trade and exchange routes. And this is one of the major misconceptions when I mention trade and connection. Everybody thinks that trade and exchange is only associated with goods and services. Well, I'm here to tell you that trade routes don't only pass on goods and services. Instead, they pass on information, tradition, religion, cultures, and so many more. So, economies that are deeply rooted in these trade and exchange routes don't only have access to the goods and the services themselves, they have access to information. And information by far is one of the most valuable forms of resources.
Now let us turn to the other side, because understanding rise is only half of the lesson. The fall is where the real education lives. Societies fall when they lose the condition that made them rise. But the tragic and endless repeated pattern of history is that they almost never lose those conditions suddenly. They lose them slowly, gradually, often invisibly, until one day the structure that everyone assumed was permanent simply gives way.
If there is any title that I want to give to this segment, it will be Things Fall Apart. Now let's dive deep into the fall of societies. If you've been with us, I really hope you've enjoyed your time here. Like this video, share it to your friends, repost it, because everybody needs to know the situation that they are currently in. Ignorance is not the first step to demise. Lack of information is. So yeah, do your own part in sharing the good news. Alright, let's continue. Now things are starting to get interesting. The first and the most universal cause of societal decline is what we call institutional decay. So institutional decay just stands to prove that life really doesn't care about how strong your systems or your institutions were. They will still fall if they are not properly taken care of. Regardless of how strong your institutions were in the past, regardless of the effort that you put into building them, if you don't maintain them or if you don't protect them from decay, they are going to rust and collapse. The fun fact is that institutional decay almost happens this same way. It always rots from the inside. The people who were supposed to serve the institutions start using the institutions to serve themselves. This process of institutional decay happens in almost all the institutions that you can think of. The only institution that veers away from this pattern is the educational institution. And the educational institution by far is the most important institution that you can have in any successful economy. Institutional decay in the educational system happens when educators who are meant to pass on real knowledge and experience start settling for credentials over substance. This is what we call settling for less. This is one of the major characteristics of underdeveloped and developing countries. This is one of the major characteristics of underdeveloped countries. Underdeveloped countries are filled with citizens who have great talent but don't even know what to do with it because they are not educated properly. To put it plainly, the educational system of underdeveloped countries only function within the walls of the educational system. Each individual act of this form of corruption may seem little, but it compounds over time. The second on our list is debt and fiscal overreach. Societies or economies could borrow for so many reasons: to fund wars, to maintain social programs, to finance empires, to embark on projects which are beyond their productive capacities. All these are valid reasons for participating or engaging in debt financing. The problem is that debt is a claim on future productivity. So essentially, countries that engage in debt financing are basically spending tomorrow's wealth today. And at some point, the future arrives. Debt is obviously meant to be serviced. You end up seeing that the economies that participated in debt financing will end up using their resources, which are meant to be used for investment and growth. They'll end up using those resources to finance and service debt, interest, and whatnot. Slowly, this compounds, the growth slows down, and before you know, the economy is slowing down, it's falling. The third on our list is the overconcentration of wealth beyond sustainable limits. Every society has some level of inequality when it comes down to the distribution of wealth among the masses. And for so many reasons, it is actually beneficial and more productive. But as we all know, there is always a balance to everything. It becomes a problem when a tiny majority controls most of the wealth revolving around an economy. The majority of the population therefore loses their trust in the system. When this happens, investors and other participants in the economy lose their credibility for the economical structure and the institutions that are operating within the economy. Moving on, the fourth cause to the fall of societies is the failure to adapt. They always say if it's broken, don't fix it, but if it's broken, then fix it. Every system that worked brilliantly in the previous era but cannot evolve becomes a liability in the next. The fifth and the last is the loss of social trust. This one is subtle, but is devastating. Social trust is underrated because nobody actually looks at social trust as any prerequisite for the rise of societies. But let me just break it down to you. Let me just let you know that social trust is the invisible glue that holds civilization together. The thing with social trust is that it doesn't just affect you from man to man, it affects the whole psychology of the society. When there is lack of social trust, people stop investing in the long term, they stop cooperating with strangers, and they start living in isolation. That is one of the major drawbacks to lack of social trust.
Here is what makes all of this so relevant to you personally and to the world you are navigating right now. We are living in a period where multiple powerful societies are simultaneously experiencing several of these decline indicators at once. Institutional trust is at historic lows in many countries. Debt levels globally are at levels never seen in peacetime. Wealth concentration has reached extremes not seen since the years just before the Great Depression. Political systems in many places are becoming increasingly dysfunctional and captured by narrow interests, and the pace of technological change is moving faster than most institutional systems can adapt to. This does not mean civilization is ending, but it does mean we are in a period of profound structural stress, and periods of structural stress are simultaneously the most dangerous and the most opportunity-rich moments in history. Grab your pen and paper, this is becoming very interesting. Because here is the final truth about the rise and fall of societies that most people miss entirely. Collapse is not the end of the story. It is a transition. When old systems fall, new ones rise to replace them. When old institutions decay beyond repair, new institutions emerge to solve the problems the old ones could no longer address. When old sources of wealth become irrelevant, new ones appear. The people who suffer most during these transitions are the ones who were deeply invested in the old system and could not see the new one forming. The people who thrive are the ones who understood what was happening, positioned themselves accordingly, and helped build what came next. Every major transition in civilization history created a new class of wealth, influential, powerful people, not because they were lucky, but because they understood the pattern. And that understanding of value, of systems, of institutions, of economic engine, of wealth flow, and now of how societies rise and fall is exactly the foundation you need to answer the most personal and important question of all, which is not about Rome or Britain or any empire of the past. It is about you. Right now, in this moment of history, where do you stand inside all of these? What is your position? What is your strategy? That is exactly what we are going to explore next when we talk about individual positioning. See you there. Don't miss out.